Minister for Small Business, who I've had, I must say, fruitful discussions in relation to the potential introduction of a framework for equity crowdfunding in this country. We are, as the Minister knows, very keen to see this framework brought in as quickly as possible. I know he has a very similar degree of interest in seeing the framework introduced to support innovation in this country. I note that $7.8 million from memory has been dedicated to the development of a disclosure template that would be provided to ASIC. I'm interested in the development of that framework and when will it commence, given that the draft legislation isn't in place. I don't necessarily see that one has to follow the other, but it would be interesting to know where that process is at. Have consultations begun between ASIC and stakeholders? Which stakeholders have been targeted? And is there a formal consultation process being observed, and how's that being implemented?
I thank the member for Chifley, and I call the Minister.
I want to thank the member for Chifley. We've had a good, constructive, collaborative engagement on getting something done that we need done for our economy, and that's getting in place a crowdsource equity funding framework. Why are we doing that? Because that's part of getting the conditions right to drive economic growth. It's also about supporting innovation and the challenge that many small and growth businesses face, getting funding to support their growth. Now, debt finance might be attractive, but you've got to pay it back. And at a time when you're putting your resources into the growth and development of your business, that's not always the best formula. Equity can be that answer. You might find a venture partner, you might find an angel investor, but that might not be for you. You might want to go out to the masses and say, here's an idea, you might want to get behind it. A few $1,000s, crowd-funded using the technology platforms of today, pitching that business idea, right-size the regulatory environment, but also letting investors know that here's a chance to be a part of either a start-up or a growth phase of that business. We made the commitment in our industry innovation and competitiveness agenda to get this framework in place, and in the budget, as the member for Chifley rightly identifies, there's $7.8 million there to support ASIC's work in that regard. Now, what does that work look like? These platforms require an intermediary, and that intermediary or the hosts of the technology platform to, let's do the equity dating service between the proponents and those that may invest. There's a need to license and make sure they're fit for purpose. There's also a need to make sure that we understand what sort of disclosure is reasonable for investors who might not be experienced investors or wholesale investors. This might be their first investment, because they've been taken up by the idea of a new online publication called The New Parliamentarian. And they're really interested in that, and they want to put some money into it. It's their first time because they love public policy and public life, and we need to make sure they get the right information. So what we've done is put out a discussion paper which has been well responded to. That was, as I recall, in December, if my memory serves me correctly. We've then had a number of round tables with industry stakeholders in Melbourne and in Sydney. We've heard about the experience in New Zealand, its benefits and its shortcomings. One which I would mention is there's no relief for public companies in terms of their reporting and governance arrangements, and that's thought to be a barrier. And also the New Zealand model doesn't reach into proprietary limited, closely held companies, yet from our consultations we've heard we've got to make sure it's got that utility. So that work continues. I respect and value the insights and the shared commitment I have with the member for Chifley, and I look forward to working with him to get this done and get this option for fundraising and access to finance for the start-up community and those in a growth phase. We're aiming to get legislation in the spring session. I'll be honest with you, that's going to require a lot of work, particularly on the closely held proprietary companies, because that's not where others have gone, yet the feedback says we need to turn our minds to that as well.